once that's finished scribbling around, we should echo back up to that. Here we go.
There's the future.
Alright, let's get back to presenting. Okay, hello and everyone who is on the channel. This is the Ethereum Engineering Group meetup, and today we're going to talk about sidechain pinning and pegging. So, yep, just wait for about another maybe 10 minutes or so, and then we'll be ready to go live with the meetup. Just zoom it in, so now it's just, should just be streaming back. We've got two people on, so myself and someone else. Oh. Yes, I think that some people, yeah. So whoever's out there, hello, and we hope you enjoy the meetup. So that's the magic. Now, the reason why sometimes the stream fails is because of the bandwidth. I think if the network connection at WeWork here suddenly gets has a hiccup, then the whole thing suddenly stops. Okay. But yeah, it all looks very straightforward when I just go. That's been up doing it for a year and a half, and the first 3 months it's not working. Ethereum Engineering Group. Because at the moment it's only just on, so there's no search terms for it, except maybe for the title.
Oh, other than that.
If you look at Ethereum Engineering, go live. Oh, you might have turned down your volume so it doesn't do that. Cool. Yeah. There you go. Cool. Oh, there he is. Yeah. Hello.
Hey, yeah, hi, mate.
I'm really well. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Do you remember Stefan?
No, I don't, but hi, Stefan.
Yeah. How are you two?
I'm pissed off that I'm on that Mitra.
Oh yes, I saw that. Isn't that? Yeah, I mean, if someone puts you on their white paper saying this person's an advisor, then yeah. I mean, one of the
It's fraud.
Yeah. Hello.
Well, that's why I sent it out to everyone, so that if the SEC gets involved, I don't have to.
Well, yeah, because you need to declare really early
Yeah, especially when I know that it's a bloody security and they haven't registered with the SEC. I don't need to be extradited to New York to.
Yeah, well, you know, especially because the thing is, it probably.
And they raised 3.4
something million.
million.
Yeah.
Shit, I don't need that on my.
Well, at least it's million, not billion. But
It doesn't matter.
yeah. Well, this is true.
Fraud is fraud.
Fraud is fraud, and I know. I mean, we're on the live stream, but I know someone else who there was a startup here in Brisbane that was doing stuff, and I said, oh, you have to really think about it. And this is just as I was doing.
Not the one down the Gold Coast.
No.
Oh, because I had an argument with someone down the Gold Coast.
And they had a whole, they said, oh, do you want to be advised, and we'll give you some percentage. And I said, actually, look, I just can't start a consensus, and it seems to conflict. And anyway, so someone else was down as an advisor, and I asked them, and it seemed awfully shadowy. And I mean, well, their one, it seemed to be they got a little bit of equity, and all they did was give their name, put their name on it, which I thought was, that did not sit right. Surely, I mean, even under the, to have a good contract, you've got to do something. You get something, and you've got to do something. If you don't have that two-way thing happening, then things can get complicated.
Certainly can. But the interesting thing is, I've done some further digging. No one knows who the two front guys are.
Oh, are they on LinkedIn?
No.
Oh, well, that's a bit, because normally people who are fronting something want to pump it, and so they even, they are out there on every single social media platform.
No, they're not on LinkedIn. And then I found a bulletin board discussion group saying these people don't exist.
Well, maybe they don't. Maybe they're thinking they'll do this Satoshi Nakamoto sort of thing and just not really exist. But I mean, that might have worked 10 years ago, not so well now. And it's different when you're raising equity. Hello there. How are you?
Next door.
Good. All better? All better now from last week?
Yes, I am. Yes. I had a really bad cold. I was off work for 2 days, and and I went to the Ecker on Sunday.
That's it. I think we know the causation. There's a linkage there.
But my wife reckoned, she was saying no.
Does she like you?
Yeah, but the thing was, on the Thursday night before the Ecker, I was on an aeroplane from New Zealand, and you know how people do cough into the air, so we can all get sick together, sort of business.
And it's all recirculated, so that's good.
Yeah. Really try and help it. Yeah. So
what's mine is yours.
Yeah. Let's share through the whole plane.
Well, it's peer to peer. Okay, it's all part of the blockchain arrangement.
Yeah. And
once you've got it, it's immutable.
Well. Yeah. Anyway, so
Well, that's what viruses are all about, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So whether it be from the aeroplane, which is entirely possible, or from the Ecker, I don't know. But
usually it takes a few days.
Yeah. So I was sort of feeling not 100% on the Tuesday. The Wednesday I was pretty bad. And Thursday I just couldn't really and not Friday. But I'm okay now.
That's good.
Finished. I got the slide, started the slides. I had the slide sort of, because this is sort of a presentation from what I presented at Triple TrustCon in New Zealand.
Right.
But with more detail. But I started updating the slides on Monday.
How's your PhD coming along, or shouldn't I ask?
No, it's okay.
Are you in write-up yet?
No, but I probably should. I probably should.
What's it on?
Ethereum private sidechains and atomic cross-chain transactions, and really there's enough information I should be writing, and we're doing practical implementation at the moment of the actual technology. We need to come up with transactions per second and some metrics, and then it'd be great to do some sort of formal analysis, bang out at least submit papers based on that, or journal articles, and then based on all of that, start writing.
You ever want me to read it?
Yeah.
I will.
Well, at the moment it's not yet written, so
Okay.
yeah.
Yes, yes. Correct. It's easy name to remember.
Yeah, I know, it's easy.
And a correct name to remember.
25,000.
Well, we've had someone contact us about a week or two ago saying, hey, we want to be have a booth space at the conference next year.
Oh, wow, that's good.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It is. It is. And we've had people
Hey.
how are you?
Good.
Yeah, people are asking, hammering our door down for how much is a booth space going to cost. That's sort of we want to be a sponsor.
So you want to make this like RSA?
How much is your space going to cost at next
Comes
year's
from their
watching and
conference,
watching
annual
conference?
conference.
The answer being, how much was your budget again?
They're up to
Twice that.
14,000.
No, it's 45,000 now.
At RSA?
Yeah, we crossed. Yeah, we.
Well, how many? They used to always have it at the Moscone Centre.
Moscone, north, south, and
West.
west.
I haven't been for
Yeah,
about 6 years.
once you pass 10,000 people, you get to a big venue.
Yeah.
No.
So it must be multiple venues now
Yeah,
in San Fran.
well, north, south, and west.
Yeah.
Well, last time I went, which was in 2015, but 2015 it was 35,000 people, and when I first went in 2006, it was something like 10,000.
Yeah, because I gave a talk in 2006. So.
There you go. I gave a talk too.
Ah, I didn't see you there.
There you go.
I didn't even see you on the.
Too many tracks.
Yeah. That's the problem. There are too many tracks.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well,
Those big conferences, I stopped going to them because they get to be crazy. No matter where you are, you want to be somewhere else.
Yes. Yeah. I think the thing about
The one talk you really want to attend is always opposite when you're speaking.
well, at least Consensus puts it on and they videotape everything and you can.
yeah.
They send you the link.
RSA conference is all about.
Oh yeah, it's all about money. Though Consensus, if you didn't go, if you went, you get it for free. But if you didn't go, it costs you $200 to get access to that video.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they do make money out of those people that didn't go but want to see the streams.
How's that?
Yeah.
No, I think. We're up to 28 past.
Yeah. Seems like every time we do a meetup, I'm uploading video interviews.
Are you trying to test out the bandwidth?
So it's better than it is at home, so I need to do this.
Yeah, well, if this starts flashing,
Well, that's not too far from my place either.
this is
supposed to be
the thing. When that starts flashing, that means I'm having bandwidth issues. But anyway,
I'll tell it if I see it.
No, it's okay. But the most typical reason why we have problems with that camera is bandwidth. And in fact, the reason why it cuts out, like it just says up, is because with the network connection at WeWork is dropped.
I can't believe they're going to float. How much did they lose last year? 900?
I thought they did float.
No, it's next week, isn't it?
Is it next week?
Yeah, but they.
Oh, it was Uber that floated, they never made a profit.
That's right.
And WeWork's never made a profit. You're like, oh, we can float too.
Well, that's right, but they lost $800 and something million last year.
Well, if you don't lose somebody's really hard, you're not trying.
You mean? Okay. I understand the logic, it's not good logic.
Correct. It's
You know what PhD stands for? Permanent head damage. You've got it.
There you go.
I was told, I was leaving now.
Wireless. Yeah, you just have the app.
Yeah, but I'll listen to what you want. Permanent head damage. That's what it is.
Alrighty.
Stupid.
Hello and everyone. Hello.
Sorry.
Not a problem. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about private sidechain pinning and pegging. This is related to a talk I did at IEEE TrustCon 2 weeks ago, but has a lot more detail. So the idea is that to come up with a privacy preserving, so a way of keeping your privacy whilst pinning, so connecting a private blockchain or sidechain to another blockchain, and in that way allowing you to leverage the security properties of the chain you're pinning to. That's what it's all about. So there are two reasons why you might want to do this, really. So in a private blockchain, you might only have a reduced set of parties. So on Ethereum MainNet, you've got thousands of nodes. You might only have, say, 3, 5 nodes, different validators, on a private blockchain. And say if you're an individual and all the other parties on it are massive companies, you might be concerned that they might decide after the fact that they want to revert state. So somehow or other they might collude. So that's one thing you might be trying to prevent. And the other thing is that maybe you want to be able to archive the blockchain, archive the sidechain, and have a way of posting, hey, this is the final state, so then you can breathe life into it later. So that is what we're going to talk about. So I have a whole set of sections. So Ethereum MainNet, what does it give you? It gives you strong authentication, integrity, non-repudiation, but doesn't give you any privacy, permissioning, or confidentiality. So authenticity, you know who did stuff. Integrity, you can't change the data around. Non-repudiation, you can't, once something is final, so once something's got enough block after it, then things can't, in that historic state, can't be changed. So once something's happened, someone can't get out of the fact that it happened. There's no way for them to mess with the past, essentially. And there's a paper that I wrote which talks about this in great detail and analyses those properties and tries to prove that they're correct. Consortium networks, on the other hand, they give you the permissioning and privacy that enterprises need. So have a look at the Enterprise Ethereum Client Spec. That really talks about the requirements and why enterprises need these features. So typically you're getting privacy, so that's all about hiding the list of participants on the chain and hiding, say, the number of transactions that are happening, the rate of them, and you've also got permissioning, so limiting who can do what, essentially, and what nodes can connect to what nodes. So collusion resistance. So you can imagine you've got mainnet along here, and you've got a private sidechain which is here, which has been pumping out blocks, and you don't want the other members of the chain to somehow or other rewind and go back to here. Or if you were a regulator and you had companies that were working together and they were reporting on something, you wouldn't want them to rewind history because where they've got to has become inconvenient for them. You don't want that to be able to happen. And so what you could do is you could pin the state of the chain. So the whole idea here is that maybe they could do something to get rid of that one. But if they try and get rid of that one, then you can say, look, this is the block hash of this block, and that block hash represents all of that history there, and we've posted it to mainnet, and so we can say, at this block, this was the state, and at the time that we posted it, everyone was happy with that. So that's what you're trying to do. And final state pinning, so you want to archive this chain, you put the block hash there, and then later on, for whatever reason, you decide, hey, we need this chain to come back from the dead. We want to bring it back to life. So you can check that block hash, and then that will then be essentially the summation of the state of that chain. So you can say, yes, that chain up to 4 equals that block hash. So both usages, you need to be able to dispute what's been posted, but you still want to try and maintain privacy. You don't want everyone to know who's on the chain. You also probably want to stop non-sidechain participants from somehow or other attacking this system, trying to do some sort of denial of service attack. So what else? What could you do? What have people done? So there's something called merged mining, and so Namecoin is a blockchain system that was all around DNS, and it used Bitcoin's mining to do merged mining. So essentially you've got blocks in each system, and you have the blocks from the Namecoin mined with the Bitcoin blocks, and in that way you're leveraging the security of Bitcoin for your Namecoin transactions. And this only works, of course, whilst Bitcoin miners are sufficiently incentivized to look at those transactions from Namecoin, make sure they're correct and validate them and mine them. And if they're not incentivized, then they stop doing it, which is what happened. Most miners don't do Namecoin anymore, and that means that I think Namecoin is mined by one party. And if you've only got one entity mining proof of work mining a currency or a blockchain, then you're in super big trouble. The other thing is that both of the chains need to use proof of work, or need to use the same consensus algorithm. And so what that means is that if you're going to have to use proof of work, that's really not going to help work in a private blockchain scenario where you're going to want to use some sort of proof of authority system. The other thing, of course, as well is if you want to have a private chain, then you don't want to be telling some other chain, hey, here are all my transactions, which it's got to validate. So again, that doesn't work. Polkadot is a system where you have a relay chain and you have parachains. And the idea is that parachains are a little bit like those Ethereum shards that Brett was talking about. You can even view them as being a little bit like the Ethereum private sidechain. So they're kind of like a little mini blockchain, but the consensus is actually done by the relay chain, not by the individual parachains. And so the idea is that you want to post the state of the parachain onto the relay chain as a way of having things happen. So it's sort of a bit like this pinning approach that I'm talking about. And so those actual parachain blocks are sealed on the relay chain by having the transactions which cause a state change, and having that state change proved using a zero knowledge proof, which means that you need to be able to view the transactions and that zero knowledge proof and comprehend it or generate it and then validate it to do your pinning. But also that means that the validators, which are randomly allocated, need to be able to look at the transactions on that parachain, which obviously again breaches the security properties that you're hoping to have by having one set of validators looking at the transactions on the parachain. So that's not going to work either, which is what I just said. So there is a paper which talks about enabling blockchain innovations with pegged sidechains. In fact, this is the first usage of the term sidechains back in, I think it's 2014, haven't got the date there. And so the idea is it allows value to be transferred from one blockchain, such as Bitcoin, to a sidechain, and hopefully back again. And so the idea is that what you try and do is you try and publish a proof to the sidechain that you have actually mined, that transaction was included in a block, and we've mined a whole heap of blocks afterwards. So the idea is because you know the proof of work value, so that salt essentially for many blocks afterwards, and you can say, well, we've got a certain block height at that difficulty level that we know we have on Bitcoin, so we've locked that in. And in fact, they were talking about you'd need 24 hours worth of blocks just to be sure. The problem, of course, is that so that pegs just a transaction, not the whole state, which is one thing. But the bigger thing is that it's okay when you're going from a high hash rate chain to a low hash rate side chain. But when you want to transfer your money back, you need, because it's a low hash rate side chain, you can't generate enough security because you need to be having these blocks generated after at a certain difficulty level, and if the difficulty level overall isn't enough, someone else could just produce that proof, then you've got no certainty, so you can't take your coins from the sidechain back. So that requires proof of work on both chains, but you essentially are, you can see that you're essentially proving transactions to a different chain, which is sort of interesting and sort of similar to what we're trying to do. BTC Relay is another technology, and it allows Ethereum to confirm Bitcoin transactions. And so the idea is you've got relayers that are compensated for posting Bitcoin block headers to a smart contract on Ethereum. And anyone who's interested in looking at Serpent code, this is written in Serpent, and which is a challenge. So Serpent's like another one of those EVM languages predating Solidity. So it's closer to assembler than Solidity, so it's a challenge. But anyway, so Bitcoin transactions are confirmed by users submitting Merkle proofs to show that the transaction was included in a block, and you've got these block headers there. And so BTC is relying on the proof of work combining difficulty for its security. So it's relying on the Bitcoin's proof of work to give you security, because you're producing the chain, and so you've got multiple active relayers relaying the current block header. So they'll be looking at different forks of Bitcoin and putting out what they see as the block header. And then of course, you'll end up having maybe a longer chain than the current chain. So when you're looking at confirming a transaction, you can only confirm a transaction that's more than 6 blocks old using BTC Relay, because it's essentially allowing for reorganizations. So as an attacker can't produce a longer chain in Bitcoin at the difficulty level, then you're safe. So that's why this works. So the issue, of course, is that it relies on the chain that you're coming from, that you're proving the values from, using proof of work, and you're not going to do that on a private chain. So again, this is not appropriate. So to understand the idea that I came up with a year and a half ago, we need a little bit of cryptography. So message digest function, also known as hash function, you have a variable length amount of data go in, goes into an algorithm, and you come out with a fixed digest. So anywhere between 0 and pretty much infinity bytes, and you get, say, 32 bytes output. And then you also have salted hashes. So essentially you prefix a salt in front of the data, and what that means is that many people could have the same data, but they will have different values come out, different digests. And this can be good to prevent against rainbow attacks, where people might know what the data is and be able to guess it, as an example. But it's just a way of altering the digest even for the same data coming in, because you choose different salt values. And the one that most people may not have heard of is a PRF, which is a pseudo-random function. And so it's the same as what most people think of as a PRNG, but a pseudo-random number generator, it allows you to put a seed in, and then you generate random looking stuff coming out. But with a PRNG or a DRBG, you can also reseed the algorithm whenever you like. In fact, you should reseed regularly. Whereas with a PRF, you never reseed. You've got a seed and you're generating a key string or a data string. And so that if you've got multiple parties with the same seed value, they will always have the same key string coming out. Okay, so the methodology. So who can look at this little diagram there and tell me something about it?
It's very small.
Yeah, it is very small, but what's wrong with that? I want to claim this as something I know is wrong with this presentation, but no one, I'm interested to see, given we've got an Ethereum audience here, what is wrong with this diagram?
Can you expand it? I can't read it. This detached away.
I thought all blockchains got appended to going to the right.
Yeah, this is obviously Bitcoin, not Ethereum, because there's only that's Bitcoin, not Ethereum. Because otherwise you have multiple Merkle trees, and yeah.
Shannon.
Do blockchains swirl in the other direction in the southern hemisphere?
Yeah, they do.
Anyway, so assume that's
the northern hemisphere.
Assume it's an Ethereum. Go ahead, spinning around. Yeah. So assume that is actually an Ethereum blockchain. Okay, and you've got in a smart contract on Ethereum, you've got a map, and in the map you've got the map keys, so the ways you're gonna, the values you're gonna use to look up the map values, and you've got the PIN, and then maybe you've got something called dispute information. So don't forget the PIN is essentially the block hash of the sidechain, and so you put one in, and then you put another one in, and so you're able to put these pins into what looks like random map keys, and so that's essentially what you're doing. And so the thing is that you calculate that map key using this equation. So you've got this pseudo-random function, so PRF value, which is generated, and then you have the sidechain ID. Sidechain ID is public, and then you have the previous pin. So essentially the previous block hash that was posted, and that gives you the map key. And so the thing about this is the PRF value, if you only share that PRF seed with sidechain participants, then they're the only ones who can come up with the PRF value and hence come up with map keys. Anyone can view the map, so anyone can see map keys after they're created, but knowing what the next map key will be is restricted to just sidechain participants. So it's a way of linking a public value to something that becomes public with something that's private, which is a useful little thing. So to choose the map, to post a map pin rather, you calculate the map key and then you post that block hash into the map key entry in the map. But then maybe you look at the, you're observing that map key entry in the map and you go, ooh, I don't agree with that pin. Someone's posted a pin that I disagree with. So to dispute the pin, you present your sidechain ID, the PRF value, previous map key, current map key. So then using the previous map key, we're able to get the previous pin. We can then calculate the map key, and given we are able to calculate that, and given you knew the PRF value, you must be a sidechain participant. So hence, you're not, a nefarious actor can't spam the process of disputing a pin. They have to be a sidechain participant, and that's proven by this PRF value. And so, so that is how you do it. But just a sec, we're trying to have privacy here. So what you do is you have unmasked and masked participants. So an unmasked participant is one where, so they're a participant of the sidechain, they're identified by their Ethereum address, and they're listed as a member of it according to their Ethereum address. And so they can dispute a pin because they can submit transactions and we can confirm that they're a member of the sidechain. And they can vote. A masked participant is identified by the salted hash of their address. So they have a secret salt and they've got their address and they create a value which is the salted hash of that, and they have that against the sidechain. So you have a list of participants of the sidechain, the masked ones and the unmasked ones. So when you want to dispute a pin, an unmasked participant proposes a vote, so they present those values, and then if you're a masked participant, you say disagree with the vote or even agree with the vote, you unmask yourself and you vote. And then once everyone's voted, the outcome of it depends on the voting algorithm. And in the Solidity contracts that I wrote, you've got a pluggable voting algorithm. So you can choose your algorithm based on what makes sense to you. So participants reveal themselves in case of dispute. Just a sec, weren't we trying to keep everything private, I hear you say? So the scenario where an incorrect pin's been posted probably is similar to a situation where you've got a contract breach. So someone's probably trying to do something nefarious. And so, in court, you have to reveal yourself to argue a point. And so, could be deemed to be a similar issue. And another way to enhance privacy is to have what's called a quiet guardian. So, you've got your plain text of the transactions, and you could design, we've designed a system where you can have ciphertext of the transactions as well, and the block hashes can be based off the ciphertext of the transactions rather than the plain text. And in doing that, you could have a special node which can't decrypt the ciphertext but can see it. So they know transactions are happening, but they don't know the contents of them. So for instance, say if you were the Reserve Bank of South Africa, you might want to know that transactions are happening between the banks, but you actually don't want to know the contents of them. You just want to know that they've happened, and you want to be the one, you actually require to be the one to be posting these pins so that you can say, this is what's happened. So it doesn't matter what sort of mess the banks get themselves into, they can't get out of the situation because they've pinned the state. Also, another thing you might want to do is hide the rate of transactions. So you've got that map there. There's no reason why you can't have many sidechains posting to the one map. And in that way, you'd be hiding the rate of transactions for an individual chain. So analysis. So there is a security analysis. Have a look at the paper. I don't think I'll put a link to the paper. Anyway, do a web search. It's on archive. The IEEE version of the paper will come out in due course, but it's on Sidechain. If you look at Sidechain pinning Peter Robinson, you'll find it.
Is the hash pinned on MainNet so we know it goes wrong?
I did a gas cost analysis, and actually doing this gas cost analysis was really interesting because it was about 6 months between when I first did these slides and did the archive paper, and when I put the slides together for the conference in New Zealand. And the Ethereum price has gone all over the place. But the interesting thing is the gas cost has gone in the reverse direction. So the actual real world dollar cost of doing stuff on Ethereum has stayed quite static. And I found that quite interesting. I know that was the whole idea of it all, but it's actually worked. So I didn't really have to change my number too much. But still, posting $508 a year, assuming 1 pin an hour, that's a bit of an investment for one sidechain. Alright, so what happens if, some node is, fails for some reason, post the wrong pin? Well, I guess you could try and say, hey, you've posted the wrong pin, you've got the private key, and now you realise that you've posted the wrong pin, you dispute the pin. Because otherwise I've got to reveal myself. Yeah, so you could do that. And what happens if the sidechain forks? Well, the sidechain is hopefully using an instant finality consensus algorithm, so it can't fork. There are no forks on the sidechain. But if you're using proof of work or something where you could fork, then that's going to be a very different kettle of fish, to use a term. So that $508 could be reduced. So if you had a whole heap of sidechains, rather than pinning directly to the mainnet, you could pin via another chain, and then so in that way you're sort of accumulating all those pins. So you could do that, and that means that you're only pinning once, but you might have thousands and thousands of chains down here that are all being secured. Or you could just pin the final hash of a block. So, but you've got to look. Another problem though is that you have to observe. So because you're pinning, and you've got the idea of voting and disputing and all this sort of business, that means you've got to be watching the chain you're pinning to. And so if you don't have 100% uptime, then what happens you do have a problem. So you need to somehow or other have this system overall where you've got 100% uptime to be watching for disputing. And then you can have denial of service attacks where one of the other parties who you don't get on with maybe tries to take you out online and then post an incorrect PIN, so you can't dispute it. So there are things related to that which can be difficult. And if you had a hierarchical approach, do you need to be looking at not only the level you're posting to, but the next level as well, and all the levels in between? Or do you just trust the higher levels to do the right thing? Finality is a really good one. So on this sidechain, we were saying, hey, we've got instant finality. So suddenly we're pinning the mainnet because we don't want the state to be reverted. So what does finality mean now? So is it when, say, that block is final or that block is final? And what is finality on mainnet anyway? And so I'm going to be doing a talk in November which is going to talk about finality on mainnet and forking and all sorts of stuff to do with that whole area. And Adrian's looking, Adrian there, not you, is looking around, so maybe he'll do it. I don't know. No. Anyway, it may be a group effort, we'll see. But I think there's a lot of topics in there: selfish mining, the heaviest chain rather than the longest chain, and all sorts of fun stuff to be talked about. So what does finality mean? So if you said it was 11 or 13 mainnet blocks, say, then that could be increasing the finality time down here. But maybe you say you've got instant finality if it's something smallish, but if you're just going to do a $10 million transaction, then maybe you want that to be final. I have 50 blocks ahead of it as well. So maybe it's a security related thing. And obviously, if you've got hierarchical pinning, you've got finality. Because you pin to here, then you pin to there, then you pin to there. So obviously, the finality is going to take longer to become final. So another approach. So who remembers BLS threshold signatures from about 3 months ago? Ooh, we've got a few waves. All right, I'm going to actually give a detailed whole 50-minute talk on BLS threshold signatures in about 6 weeks' time. So that'll help everyone get up to speed on them. But needless to say, the idea is that you can have a group of parties that can threshold sign something, and then you're able to verify it with a single public key without betraying who signed it. And so it's just M of N of these people over here sign something, and then magically you can verify it. So so thinking of that concept, so what you could do is you could have these validators that are on the sidechain. Why don't they threshold sign the block hash? So rather than someone posting it and then you potentially voting on it and disputing it, why don't you have a threshold number of the validators say, hey, this is the block hash. We've come to consensus essentially. We're voting this is it, and then you could verify on mainnet the signature before it's posted, or you could just put it up there, and then others could offline verify the signature. And these BLS signatures are quite compact, so you're not going to be uploading tons of data either. So that is a possible approach. So there's no dispute mechanism, and also you don't really need to observe the blockchain that you're pinning to. So it does seem promising. However, you won't be able to post any pins if you have fewer than threshold number of validators all wanting to cooperate. And as well, you suddenly need 2N messages. So one party sends out to all other validators, hey, could you please sign this? And then they all send back, here's my partial signature, and then you post the combined signature. So you need a bit of messaging that you didn't need. And if there is going to be key rollover, so in all good crypto systems you're able to roll the keys, and so if you're going to be able to roll the keys, then you're going to have to vote on the new public key, and if you can vote on the new public key, then everyone's going to have to observe the blockchain where the public key is, and we're back to where we started again. So, yeah. So, in summary, block hashes, or otherwise known as pins, of a sidechain are put into a smart contract on Ethereum MainNet. This allows the sidechain to leverage the authenticity, integrity, non-repudiation properties of MainNet, and it provides some protection against state reversion and allows you to pin the final state of an archive chain, which is incredibly important because then it means that you can archive a sidechain and feel confident that if you need to, you can breathe life back into it. And participants generally can maintain their privacy unless, of course, there's a dispute. So, in 2 weeks' time, Sandra, who's at the back there, is going to tell us all about invoice financing using blockchain and Bayesian networks. And then David, who's just there, is going to tell us all about Lex Mercatoria deal making between small spacecraft in the outer solar system. So essentially automatic deal negotiation. So you can think of it as supply chain sort of stuff or just automatic deal negotiation.
And it's so far
More
away.
of a merchant.
It's so far away you can just presume it works.
Yeah.
Lex Mercatoria.
Okay.
Means law of the merchant.
Yes.
Or merchant law.
Yeah. So you're out. So all right. I've seen the paper and I've talked to David a bit. So you're out. You're 400 years ago. You're out in the East Indies. Yeah,
Sure.
You're out in the East Indies, and I want to do some sort of thing between my ship and your ship, and you work for a different company, and so we just work it out, pretty much ourselves. Is that it? All right, that was.
That's step one.
That was
As long as there's no dispute.
all right, as long as it, yeah.
Yeah.
So David will give us more information in 4 weeks' time, so that should be very interesting. And then in 6 weeks' time, I will give a lot more detail on BLS threshold signatures. Yeah. Okay, there is a GitHub repo for those who want to look at the code, and there is also a paper which I don't have a link to. But are there any questions?
Is there any reason that you can't dispute a past pin?
Yes. Yeah.
Because
So
you could have been offline for a while, come back online and go, that's not the right pin.
Yes.
And then check with us.
Yes. So I had a long, hard think about this. So there is a voting period or dispute period, and the thing is, if you allow people to wind back to the dawn of time and dispute stuff that happened, long ago, then that then would invalidate all of the future pins, and doesn't that then allow the consortium to come together and say, hey, we actually don't like where we ended up with this blockchain, and so they then say, hey, we want to dispute all these pins here, and we're going to go with a new line of history. And so that would actually be really bad. So the whole property of not allowing dispute and saying, well, we're actually locked in, you need to have a dispute period. And if after the dispute period no one's disputed it, then you say, well, this was the pin that we agreed to.
So it's finality for pinning.
Yes, essentially. Yeah.
With PRF, if you have a new node coming in, from where does it get the original seed? Is that a security?
Yeah, well, the PRF seed's got to be offline. Yeah, so it's got to be separate. And yeah, so how you can do this sort of thing though is in, say, an Ethereum private sidechain case, you would use what's called a salted KDF, and so you would be passed a seed securely. And then what you do is you have certain key value or seeding values that you seed off that seed. So you essentially hash the seed with, say, PRF seed as a string. And then that gives you the PRF seed. So you only need one value that you can then derive many values from. But you would need to somehow or other publish your public key. And if you remember the Ethereum registration authority system, that was all about a way of publishing some public keys that you can then use to bootstrap the whole system. And so what you do is you'll use the IP address and some of those public keys to set up the initial communication to say, hey, we want to create a sidechain, or we want to add you to the sidechain, and then it would spawn a node. It would then link that node in to the Ethereum network, which is the sidechain, and then you would say, hey, here's a initial superseed value that we're encrypting against your public key. Here it is, and then you'll set up all of your PRF seed values and all the other values you need. But I mean, it's the normal situation if you have one little, one thing down the bottom that is then encrypted by stuff, and then you'll use that to create all the other key material.
What's the strength of these PRF value? Are they like 2-bit, 64-bit, or the true? Like,
You would have them as you'd have, well, it'd be 256 bits long, and so the security strength of it. That's a very good question, because you're essentially diluting your entropy. So if you can think you started out with, say, 256 bits of entropy, then for every time you're producing another word, you could you're diluting your entropy, and hence diluting the actual security of it. Yes, but because they're secret values and you're not revealing it, then you don't quite have the same problems as if you were revealing it all the time, because then someone could then look at this huge sequence of them and maybe then somehow or other attack the system to try and determine the actual seed value.
I didn't understand that. Can you explain that again?
Which part of it?
From the very beginning, to be honest. On your entropy.
Well, yeah, so when you think of a PRNG, random number generator, so you seed that, say, with 256 bits. Well, you seed it with a whole heap of bits, but then you hash that down to an entropy pool. So maybe you've got 256 bits of entropy there.
And that's going to be your seed, you're saying?
Yeah. And so say for a PRNG, when you're banging out values, if you want to have a public value and you want to say, hey, that's 256 bits of security, so surely part of that's got to be related to the entropy that you've used. And as you bang out more and more values that people can then use to try and determine the entropy value that you started with, then you're essentially diluting the actual security strength of what's been created. And so that's why you're continually adding
I
entropy.
agree with that mathematically.
Okay.
Sorry,
I'm not going to try and prove it to you, and I'm not the one who came up with that idea.
Right.
Go and argue with me. They're all super keen on reseeding, and that's a big part of it all. Any other questions? Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and we hope to all see you in the coming fortnights for the meetup in the future. Thank you.
one question.
Oh, one more question.
Does it make sense to pin, like if the chain has fork, can we pin on both chains so that we are both?
Yeah. For a consensus algorithm which allows forking, trying to understand how you would do that, I think that you would have to have. I think maybe how the BLS approach allows you to just say, well, enough of us have agreed this is it. Maybe that makes more sense than this, because this was the approach with the map. It certainly relies on there being a linear set of blocks, which the instant finality, like IBFT style algorithms, give you. But anyway, all right. So thank you, everyone. Stop share. I'll just stop the